Changing the contrast with levels. Using levels, you can stretch or compress the current value range of your image to a new value range. Changing the value range will change the contrast of the image. Look at this image. I have removed the hue. Then I select this one, and if I take color sample, you can see that this slider is moving around here. So the value scale is around here. But if I select this one and take color sample, the value range is longer. So the value range of this one is shorter than the value range of this one. How did I change the value range? I changed the value range using levels. I select the first image, then I press Ctrl L, then I move these sliders to define a new value range. So now it becomes lighter. You can compare it before and after changing the position of this slider. This is shadow slider, midtone, and highlights slider. Let me explain how I used levels to change the value range in more detail. This is a histogram before editing, and this is the histogram after editing, the contrast of the image. I moved this slider, highlights slider, to a new position. And I also changed the position of the shadow slider to here. Here is an empty area. It means no pixel with this value exists here. You can see that there is not very bright pixel in the image. You can see the same thing here. This is highlight area and there isn't any vertical line here. So it means no pixel with this value scale exists in this image. Here is the value range in this image. By moving this slider, you can define a new value range by stretching it. This is the new value range. As you can see, this one is bigger than this one. So the contrast of this image is more than the contrast of this image. What is happening is that no more difference between the lightest here and the darkest point here or here and here is in the image by adding more value scale. So the value step or value scale here is more than the value step or value scale here. So we can say that we have stretched the value scale. Now let's make another example, but this time instead of stretching, we compress the value range. We said that this image has a full range of value. I bring it here. This is the histogram before editing. This is histogram during the editing, and this is the histogram after editing. You can see that it covered the full range of the spectrum. If I select this one and if I press Ctrl L, you can see that this vertical line is spreading all over this area. So it means this image has a full range of value scale. But if I bring the slider here and this one to here, I am compressing it. So we now have this one. If I press OK, and now if I press Ctrl L, you can see that now we have a new value range. So let's explain what happened in detail here. When I move this slider, the highlight slider to this side, you cut off any pixel beyond the slider, no matter what value scale they have. You turn them to white using levels. Photoshop will turn them to the white. For example, here, it doesn't matter which value pixel this area has. It finally will end up to the white color. And here, when you move the shadow slider, you cut off any pixel beyond the slider, no matter what value scale they have. You turn them to black. Here, it's a dark area, but it's not completely black. But when you move this slider, you turn it into black. You can see this mid-tone doesn't exist anymore in this image. So you define a new value range by compressing it. Here you define a value range by stretching it, but here you define a value range by compressing it. So now you have more difference between the lightest and the darkest point in the image by removing value scale beyond shadows and highlight slider. So what's happening is that Photoshop find a pixel and replace it with a new pixel with the new value scale. It's a mid-tone range, but Photoshop replace it with a dark value scale. Here, Photoshop find a pixel and then replace it with a new value scale. This pixel belongs here to this value scale, but Photoshop will replace it to this new value scale. I tried to explain this complex concept as simple as I could. I hope the explanation is clear enough so you get the concept. But if you still don't understand how levels work, don't worry. For me, it takes a long time to understand how really levels work. So don't worry, by practice and watching this video again, you will gradually understand how levels work. To be more familiar with levels, let's look at level in a different way. How levels read an image. When you want to edit an image with levels, there are two axes, horizontal axis and vertical axis. The horizontal axis answer to this question: which area does a pixel belong to? Shadows, midtones, or highlights? Photoshop find this pixel, and this is a completely black pixel. So Photoshop will draw a bar here because this pixel belongs to the shadow area, and Photoshop will reach to this pixel. This pixel has a mid-tone range, so Photoshop draw a bar here in the mid-tone, and again Photoshop will reach to this pixel, and because it's absolutely white, it draw a bar in the highlight area. Next, we have vertical axis. This vertical axis answer to this question: how many pixels with a specific value exist in the image, relatively, in comparison to the number of the pixels with different value scale. Because the number of shadow midtone, and highlight pixels that consist this image is equal, the height of this bar is equal. I select the black color and I add it here. Now you can see the histogram change. The height of this bar is much longer than the height of this one. Again, here I have 6 value. Each bar belongs to a specific value scale. I select this one, this bar, then I add this color to the rest of the image. As you can see, now the height of this bar is much longer than the other value scale. This is because the number of pixels with this specific value is much more than the number of other pixels with different value. Same as here, I have 9 value scale. Again, I select this value scale, this color, and I add it to the rest of the image. Again, height of this value scale is longer than height of the other value scale. This is because the number of pixels with this specific value is much more than the other pixel with different value. Again, same as here. I select the midtone color and I add it to the image. Now you can see in this histogram the height of all of the value scale are equal because all of them has equal number. But the height of this bar that represent the number of pixel of this value scale is much longer than rest of the image. I tried to explain levels as simple as I could. But if you don't get the concept, don't worry. Gradually, by practice, you will understand how level works. I hope you liked this tutorial. See you in next tutorial.